You're listening to Second Cut. This is the podcast, independent now, where we talk about topics in film theory, criticism, history, and, whatever else we think of. I'm Jacob, and I'm the one who got out of the elevator by saying he's sorry.
I'm Sam. I'm the master of quack foo.
I'm Kieran. I'm the one that is probably an angel's man rather than a devil's man. I don't know, something very clever along those lines.
Look, say what you will about Marvel's house style now, but man, we're talking about movies either produced by famous people or by somebody that Kieran knows personally. And that's George Lucas.
People I know personally. Yes, I know George Lucas.
More broadly, what a film producer actually does,
and kind of their influence, I guess.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Especially with the Howard the Duck one, because here's the thing: anytime Howard the Duck comes up in something, they mention George Lucas. It's like he didn't direct the damn thing. But it's it's a George Lucas film,
It's like one of two things everyone knows about Howard the Duck. One, bizarrely, George Lucas produced it, and two, it's weirdly adult for a family kind of targeted film.
In the nicest way, there are duck boobies in it. It's just not right.
Oh yes.
It's a lot like the B movie in a sense too, in terms of inappropriate animal-human relationship.
It's like there is weird, almost duck sex, not in a kind of Return to Nukem High Volume 1 and 2 kind of sense. But to be honest, this isn't that far off a Troma movie.
I mean, we'll come on to all that. I mean, but just generally, I think I say that the role of a film producer has kind of changed quite drastically over time. The birth of cinema. Back in the early kind of studio era, kind of Hollywood, they were the names, that films are sold, and really, you kind of director credit was almost an afterthought. Really, it's like they were there. This is their film. This is their products.
I was gonna say the amount of times I know that Howard Hawks didn't do Thing from Another World, but I still see it. That's the name in my head because he produced it, for some reason that's the one that's attached. And one of my old lecturers did point out that kind of if you think of film, who's the main name now, it's a director. But if you think of a TV series, who's the main name, it's the showrunner. It's the writer, essentially. So there's a different slant on things, and things change with this medium over time.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're like a silent comedy kind of obsessive, you probably won't really know that the directors of, say, all the Laurel and Hardy films, off the top of your head. You don't have to check it, and I've seen most of them. But you know that they're all Hal Roach movies. You know that he was the movie mogul who kind of gave them their studio home, and kept them creatively together.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it's kind of the sort of the big stars would also produce their own stuff as well. So people like Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin, they pretty much did everything. Especially because when you look at kind of the credits for those films, it's a much smaller list of people that are working on it. It's like a camera, if not two, one costume, one stunt, two actors. You've obviously got no sound, and it's like the After Effects is very limited. You essentially turn up there, get what you need to do, have one person cutting the film together, and you go like that. So kind of the credits list, you compare something from 1920 to a Marvel movie now, kind of there's about 5 times as many stunt people in the damn thing as something, I don't know, like a Keaton movie.
Yeah, and Kieran, you have a bit of expertise on what does a film producer do.
I was going to say, don't say I'm the expert on this, even though technically, theoretically, I am.
Out of the three.
Theoretically, yeah. I do have to say that the degree I did was the first year of it, and Aberystwyth did have to add in some general film studies modules on there. So one module was on new film history, which is a complete kind of academic film module, and one of them was kind of related in that it was on distribution and exhibition. So there were bits on kind of like a week on like micro cinemas, a week on streaming, a week on kind of the birth of cinema and that kind of thing. So it was tangential, but not like producing related. But yes, I have a master's degree in film producing somehow. I still don't know how that managed to happen.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I worked out, I think, about 15% of it was all geared around this one film, All the Devil's Men, which means that going back and actually watching it for the first time since I actually did it, I'm going, this is really weird, because in my opinion, it's not a great movie. But and I'm kind of being incredibly lenient with what I say here, because like my lecturer gave it to us because he helped produce the damn movie. So he knew went on behind the scenes, and so there's stuff I know that I'm like, I don't know how confidential this information is, and I don't want to be too harsh on it, because obviously it would like be half slandering off like people I know and have worked with. But the movie is perhaps not as good as it could have been. The script is not as good as it could have been. I'm sure you will have your own opinions, and you can be as unfiltered as you like. But I also kind of look at it, and it's kind of like I'm emotionally numb to it, because I was so deep in the film at one point, having to get into the nuts and bolts of the script in order to work it as part of my assessments.
I mean, essentially, this episode is someone has to produce the crap as well. I mean,
Yeah.
I was going to say, in the nicest way to all three films, none of them are kind of are any of them fresh on Rotten Tomatoes?
No.
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 Well, I think specifically whenever I was thinking about choosing this as a topic, the Thunderbolts marketing scheme right now is this is like an A24 movie, except it's a Marvel movie, and
yeah,
it's like from the people who brought you this and this and this, and then that's supposed to convince you to go watch their pile of crap.
There was also Alto Nights that came out, and it was like from the one of the producers of Goodfellas or something like that, because it's essentially two De Niro's. Alto Nights is not good. Don't go watch it.
I think it's essentially it's marked as like they don't even get specific to that. It's like from the people who brought you Goodfellas. I think it's like it's very very vague.
The movie Gotti is from the person who brought you like The Irishman,
which is not it's not technically untrue, but it's kind of it's been very selective with the information there.
And I mean, even though he was a director, think of obviously the marketing for Metropolis last year. Sorry, Megalopolis. That's one, not Metropolis. I'm not slandering Metropolis. I apologize. Megalopolis, which is obviously kind of catching on the name from, which is all kind of quotes about kind of artistic vision and the people behind it as much as the people in front of the screen. You can use that to think. I did read like a couple of years ago, somebody did an article looking at kind of the advertising for the Conjuring movies. And as they've gone on, the kind of changing from the people that brought you this. So initially it was kind of like director of Saw, and then they kind of went focus on Insidious, and then they went from Minds Behind like Conjuring 1, and then when one and Juan will step back a bit, there's also like from the executive producer of Conjuring 2 that comes in and stuff like that.
I mean, they very much leaned into that for the Candyman reboot, didn't they? You know, John Peele's name was like all over that, to the extent that a lot of people assumed he directed it, before going to see it.
And I mean, even Companion that came out earlier in the year, literally the big thing was
Barbarian was plastered all over it, wasn't it?
I
think they're just exec producers, aren't they? The writer and director.
Yeah, I was going to say nothing to do, like they're involved, but it's not their film.
I think it was that trailer was like from the depraved minds that brought you Companion. That brought you Barbarian.
So it's like this could be like the original story creator that didn't even write the screenplay. This could be one of the line producers. Like, this means absolutely nothing at a certain point. This could have been from the gaffer that worked on Barbarian. Like, it means absolutely nothing. But if it sells, then it sells. And part of a film producer's job, well, I mean, that's technically the marketing. But also the film producer's job is he has a job to do, and his job is to produce a film, to come up with it on time, on budget, and of decent quality that matches the brief, and that is their job. And that is how it is for 99% of films, probably except for the very, very small micro budget ones where it's one guy doing everything and dragging their mates in. Or it's somebody like Christopher Nolan or Scorsese or one of maybe sort of 20 odd directors working at the moment where they have the clout that essentially studios will essentially just buy the director and go, we will do whatever you want to do. But even then, at a certain point, they will still bring on producers that will mess with stuff, because that was one of the reasons why Mickey 17 was delayed, was essentially, even though Universal, Warner Brothers, who got Mickey 17 eventually?
It was Warner's, because
Warner, okay. Yeah, it was
kept pushing it back.
yeah, so even then, even though they go, Bong Joon-ho, massive name now, let's get him in for the next film, because obviously it's going to be a big one. He's just won Best Director the first one. He's all the rage, the great auteur that's not kind of Anglophonic. It will get them in. We're still going to have interference from them.
I mean, even big name directors need like a good experienced producer, for a successful
George Lucas.
Like production, especially when you get to like larger scale kind of filmmaking. I mean, even like so someone like Michael Bay, for years it was him kind of teaming up time and time again with like people like Jerry Bruckheimer, to kind of to keep things on track, and because essentially produce the way it kind of comes down to like really simple brass tacks. Producers get things financed, keep things afloat, don't they? That's just keep things on track. The kind of the stereotypes is like limited creativity and it all been about the money, but essentially they've got investors on the side. They're the business side of it, and they're just trying to make sure it goes off without a hitch as best they can. Really.
Well, I mean, one of the reasons why they're so controlling is because if anything goes wrong, they are the person it comes back on.
Behind.
And if anything goes wrong with the financing, if for whatever reason you end up $2 million in debt, they're the ones that have to find it. And it's kind of a thing of, if you have to mortgage your house to do it, you have to mortgage your house to do it. If you have to sell off like 3 of your cars to do it or whatever, or your grandmother's kind of jewelry that's handed down to float something, that's what you have to do. It's not the accountant's job; it's the producer's job.
If you have to sell your vineyards to get your dream project made.
Well, I mean, Hugh Pentlath Jones, who was my lecturer and also exec producer, I want to say, not main producer on All the Devil's Men, which we'll discuss later. He has, I don't think he did it for this one, but he has been known essentially to kind of mortgage his house and put his house on the line as collateral in order to help refloat a film. So a lot of the time when they're being incredibly tight about stuff, it's because half of that, I kind of learned that half of the film producer's job is to make sure the film gets made, and half the job is to make sure that if anything goes wrong, it's on somebody else. A lot of the time that doesn't always happen, because if all those fallbacks fail, it's on you. So there are people that have kind of ended up in serious debt trying to keep films afloat when stuff has just gone over. It wasn't this film, but Hugh has told me that, I may have said this before, he was brought onto a film that was in production. The production company was saying that essentially the director was being a typical auteur director. I can do what I want. I'm the great artiste. I'm going to do anything like that. He comes on. They've got to shoot kind of the next day. He's been on a couple of days just to get up to speed. The next day he goes, okay, you're in this cafe. You've got from here to here to shoot. And after that, we have to be out because this is how long we've booked the place for. If it goes any longer, we have to pay for it to rent the damn space. The director's like, I can do what I like. I've no idea what film this is, so I'm allowed to say this because I don't know who the director was. Fast forward to the next day. About 2 hours after he was meant to have finished, Hugh gets a phone call. He's still there. They're not done yet. What the hell is going on? Goes down to it. What are you doing? You are meant to be gone from here, because most of the time the producer is not on set. They're in the office trying to arrange everything. And the director's going, I'm the director, blah, 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 do what I want, like that. And so Hugh turns around and goes, okay, then you know that Ferrari that you wanted for a couple of days later in our shoot, it's now not a Ferrari. It's now a Mercedes because it's cheaper. And the director's like, you can't tell me what to do. I need the throw. It's like, tough. The money you spent on that, you've just used now. Bring it in under time, or you don't do it. So, like, it's because, I mean, some of them are dicks. And I'm not going to unfilter that. You know, Hugh also has given many tales in our kind of modules of people he knows that have gone for prison for embezzlement and stuff like that, of millions. You know, it does happen, but also the good ones get paid well. The bad ones kind of end up getting absolutely demolished by the system because it is massive amounts of money and it's essentially your neck on the line if it doesn't go right. So there are things that have to be balanced, and normally a producer will try and give artistic license because they trust the director to present their vision of art, and they trust that their vision of art will essentially bring in the people, and they will try and accommodate as much as they can because they're essentially hiring the director to make it for them, so they're going to trust them to do that. But if stuff needs to happen, the producers need to get together and go, okay, we need to make this stuff happen because this is not meeting these specifications. They have to deliver a package. The director is essentially hired to kind of decide how they want it to look. That's the trade-off. And so there are kind of producers that will be incredibly mean-spirited and creative control and stuff. But their job is essentially to get a product that will make money. That is their job.
What is the difference between an executive producer and a normal producer? Just producer.
Oh,
I mean, I think in theory, anyone can get an executive producer credit, can't they? It's almost it's like a thanks. Normally, you might put a bit of money on, or you might have helped facilitate a particular aspect of the film. But
yeah,
I think it's less hands-on, isn't it? Usually, it's like they'll
yeah.
have some involvement at some point in the process, but like a major role.
Yeah, kind of. Normally, the producers are the ones hand-on doing all the organizing.
Yeah.
Line producers are normally the ones making sure that all that the film stays on track. The exec producers are kind of the studio heads or the people that have put an awful lot of money in there.
So like, for example, Spielberg was an exec producer on all of the Transformers movies, but I think apart from the first film, he didn't really have anything to do with them. He just had his name on there. You know?
Yeah, I think if you almost think of like an exec producer, almost like a kind of like a shareholder or a stakeholder kind of thing, where they will obviously want some say in what's going on, but a lot of the reason for that is they've put the money in. So they won't have kind of the nitty gritty things, but they will have some say. So for example, if they want an action movie and the way it's cut together is now coming a bit more like a thriller, they're not going to be happy, and they might say, no, we actually kind of paid for this. So the producer would go, okay, thank you for that. We need to get on it, and it'll filter down like that. That's how I would say it. Probably other people are going to tell me I'm completely wrong.
I find it interesting now. You seem to get more and more big film stars, you know, producing their star vehicles. You know, so your Margot Robbies, you know, Tom Cruises, and more recently Emma Stone. You know, they're all kind of getting involved in that side of things and kind of being more active about, you know, choosing their projects. And it's like, I know my name will sell this, but I will kind of put in the legwork to kind of get it off the ground as well. I will. You know, I'll be involved at every stage of it.
What's it? Emma did Real Pain, didn't she? She was producing Real Pain because she's obviously the Zombieland crew sticks together and stays together for life.
Yes, that's right.
It's like, I saw his episode. I was like, oh my god, it's the Zombieland crew. You know. I mean, Brad Pitt was exec producer on Mickey 17.
Through Plan B. I mean, they've got their own. That's another thing I love about producers, that what they end up calling their production companies. You know, so
Vin Diesel's is One Race.
Scot-free. Yeah, Scot-free is obviously Ridley Scott. Blinding Edge is Shyamalan's current one.
Yeah, like by Brian Singer, you know, who I know we don't really talk about anymore, but his was Bad Hat Harry after the quote from Jaws.
Yeah.
And
Jordan Peele's is Monkey Paw.
Yep. Margot Robbie's is Lucky Chap.
Yeah.
Well,
but So that's the basic overview of a film producer, aka technically they have the important role.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why kind of it's the producers that go up and collect Best Film Award. The director may be a producer and they may invite them up, but it's the producers that win the best film because they have produced, they have created, they have
I sometimes cynically wonder if that's why people like Nolan, insist on being a producer on every one of their films, just so they don't miss out on any of the accolades going up on stage.
I mean, there probably is that, but if you're one of the producers, you also have some sway on that panel as well. And I think you have to be a fairly established name in the directing side.
That's true.
If you're doing kind of smaller films, then kind of the director is essentially a director for hire. Once you get to the state that Nolan is at, and the kudos, I think it's kind of also you're there because it's also in your best interest. And you have a sway on that board of people as well, as well as the people.
Yeah, there's a fair few married couples as well who are like a directing, producing kind of partnership. It's like Nolan and Emma Thomas and Zach and Deborah Snyder and a few others. They're.
I was going to say John Carpenter. Was John Carpenter married to Deborah Hill?
I think. Well, I don't know. I'm not 100% sure there.
Zack Snyder and his wife.
Yeah. But there was like. Back in the day, who else was there? There are a couple of other big ones. James Cameron and
Powell and Pressburger.
I mean, for two films, Catherine Bigelow and Jerry Bruckheimer were.
Yeah, true. Yeah,
because they did Point Break and did they get Strange Days? I think they did Near Dark or Cold Steel or something like that. They were a very close partnership. I can't remember if they were an item. But the partnership also therefore works very well because you kind of, for the directors, it's very good if you have a producer on your side in the room, and if you need to be there yourself, or you need to get somebody in there and be very close to somebody that's kind of in that group, so that you can steer these kind of financial decisions.
Yeah, and you can take your work home with you, can't you? And not have to call someone in the dead of night. You can just turn over and have the thought in bed with them. Like, hey, I've just had this amazing idea.
Yeah, because that's the thing. I mean, we think that film is a completely artistic medium and all these things, and it obviously is at the end of the day. But when you get to a certain amount of money, it also is a commercial venture, and you do have to have people on there that are in charge of the business side. I think if directors were inside, if there were no producer, it was purely the director, like there would be millions and millions of directors just in like billions of debt. Because they would not stop at anything. You do need somebody to turn around and go, no, time's up, sorry, got to go. And you do have to have these people on there that essentially lay down the rule and organize it like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we spoiled that George Lucas is one of those rule layer downers. Sam, do you want to talk about Howard the Duck?
It's like, not particularly.
Why not? Well, I mean, I've watched it now. It's up till preparing for this. I'd never seen this before. I knew it by reputation, but I'd never quite got around to it until now. After the critical commercial successes of American Graffiti, Star Wars trilogy, and 2 Indiana Jones films, George Lucas next presented the first Marvel movie, Howard the Duck. Yes, this was based on a Marvel comic strip, a lesser known one. One from the mid-70s that was best known as the property that Disney sues into, basically sued the character into wearing pants. So, when he was originally drawn in the comic strip, he looked quite a lot like Donald Duck. And
strange.
And then in like the next issue after the lawsuit, all of a sudden he was wearing clothes on his bottom half, and he quipped he broke the fourth wall and said to the audience, "My lawyers tell me I've always been wearing these pants." So so as far as I can gather, George Lucas he basically made a few films with his friends from film school. So Willard Hewitt and Glorious Katz, who co-wrote American Graffiti for him.
And by the way,
they came
Willard
together.
Hyuk is too close to Mallard Duck. Like,
That's true.
Yeah. I mean, there are a couple of Mallard jokes in there.
Yeah. So they met in film school. They got on real well. They made American Graffiti together. And they came back a few years later. Basically, after George Lucas had stepped back from like hands-on filmmaking, he'd built Skywalker Ranch, and he just wanted to just get a few other kind of different kind of projects off the ground, but in completely backseat kind of capacity. Basically, I'll put some money down and I'll support you, but do what you like. I don't really care. Essentially, but by that point he just built Skywalker Ranch and for around 50 million, and was banking on Howard the Duck apparently to get some of that back, and that did not go well.
I wonder if we've got any directors, kind of very well-known filmmakers, kind of in recent years that have done similar things, that have kind of tried to make kind of passion projects in order to keep their slightly more commercial ventures outside of filmmaking going, and then that film be a commercial flop. I mean, that maybe in some way kind of related to Lucas in some kind of filmmaking capacity. I'm sure that I must be exaggerating and making these things up, but it wouldn't it be interesting if there were kind of modern day parallels?
It would be fascinating, wouldn't it? Yeah. Interestingly, arguably, if you didn't have Howard the Duck, you wouldn't have Pixar. Let me explain. So the film bombed, and because of that, he was forced to sell off his assets. And it's at the point that Steve Jobs, Mr. Apple, offered help by buying Lucasfilm's CG animation department for a price well above its market value. And in dire straits, Lucas agreed to this, and that eventually evolved to become Pixar Animation Studios. So you wouldn't need to do that if this hadn't flopped, essentially, and that kind of started the chain of events. So quite like that.
So what you're saying is that a film essentially based off a Disney character led to another Disney studio.
Yes.
But in a very roundabout way. And also the studio that made this film with a character that's definitely not based on a Disney character would eventually be owned by Disney.
Yeah.
There's like everything is Disney here. Like,
I tell you what, I was astounded this wasn't available on Disney Plus. I mean, they're missing a trick there.
No, I don't think they are.
So Lucas he went to Hewitt and Katz, and with this wacky comic that he quite liked and thought make an interesting film. He offered the project, I think, to John Landis first to direct, but he turned it down. So he thought, hey, Willard, good mates. Do you want to make your directorial debut? And I'm sure it won't be your only film you ever direct for any reason. So yeah, Willard Hewitt got in the director's chair for this, unfortunately for him. But basically, it takes the basic premise of the original comic. Alien Duck Howard, who was voiced by Chip Zane, and
like
performed by a variety of people, but usually credited to Ed Gale, who also played Chucky. He's transported to Earth in experimental teleporter accident thing. It's not really very clear. Scientists doing some weird things with energy beams, and it drags things out from space and transports down to Earth. Anyway,
insert sci-fi stuff here.
Yeah. Howard arrives on Earth in is it Cleveland? I think it's Cleveland.
Cleveland.
At least it's not New York. Arrives in Cleveland and teams up with punk singer Beverly, played by Leah Thompson, and neurotic scientist Phil, played by Tim Robbins, to find his way back home. But on the way, another darker and hungrier extraterrestrial presence has also arrived on Earth, and they end up battling it, essentially. So yeah,
it's kind of bog
it's
standard
generic
superhero origin movie.
It's generic fantasy, sci-fi, action adventure gubbins. Just which essentially is what the original comic was. The comic was very much a satire of the usual kind of genre conventions, and
almost
with
a bit
Howard,
like Squirrel Girl is a kind of
with Howard kind
light
of turning
satire.
to the audience and saying, "Oh, isn't this wild?" I think he's been compared quite a bit to, almost like predated. He did like Deadpool before Deadpool was Deadpool. It's a similar kind of stuff, really.
Well, AKA it's a Marvel comedy that isn't for kids. That's the comparison. This is this may have been compared to Deadpool. Can we just point out for anyone that hasn't seen it, this is nothing like Deadpool.
No, it's not. So we open on the duck planet. How it's from. I can't remember what they actually name it, but essentially it's a planet much like ours, but populated by anthropomorphic ducks.
It's Duck World.
It is Duck World.
I was going to say it might be Duck World, Ducktopia, Ducktropolis. Who cares at this point?
So straight off that, we're in Howard's apartment, and he has all these like movie posters and things, for their realities version of what we have now. So
strangely enough, at least one of them is Indiana Jones.
Yeah. Yes. So they have a poster for one project starring May Nest and W.C. Fowles. You have another poster for Splashdance and another poster for Breeders of the Lost Stork, which is a tortured pun there, really. They
this is
tried hard on that one.
Here's the thing, right? A couple of years later, Aardman would do this kind of thing correctly with dog-related puns. These guys haven't quite got it nailed at this point in time.
Yeah, exactly. And then straight off from this first scene, you're already kind of weirded out because I'm not sure I ever wanted to see a duck centerfold. It's like, was it play duck is reason? And then and also why she got nipples? Why does the lady duck have nipples? And oh god, there's another in a bath.
Yes.
The next shot basically he's picked up and ripped out of his living room by the beam, and he's crashes through a few buildings, including the bathroom of one lady duck, and she's having a bath with her duck breasts out. So
I mean, at least when we did Felix the Cat, which is around the same time within a couple of years, Felix the Cat kind of knew what it was doing, and it was an adult cartoon, and you can kind of get away with something like that. I say adult cartoon, not as but this is just like, I don't know what it's going for, and this is after Spielberg, to blame Spielberg, has kind of brought in the rating system. What was this rated at the time? Do we know?
It's a 12 now. I don't know what it was back in the day. No.
I will do some live research. Keep going.
Yeah.
Apparently, feeling at odds with the PG certificate.
Right. Okay. I mean, interestingly, the duck boobs aren't one of the things that are more often edited out in like international cuts. Of sense had more of a problem with the scene later on where like the bad guy, this alien possessing this scientist sticks his tongue in a cigarette lighter in a car. Apparently that was more dangerous because it's imitable behavior.
Is this a bit like with Psycho, where they were more up in arms about showing a toilet than seeing a woman stabbed to death in a shower?
Yeah.
I'm also remembering, there was an episode of like Peppa Pig that was banned for one point because they didn't wear a seatbelt in a car, and that might be imitable with kids. And it's just like the fact that obviously it's an adult driving it, which has a legal responsibility to check in the first place. Apparently, this changes everything, and so it needs to be banned. Like there is some weird censorship like stuff going on in the world.
Yeah. I mean, my main note for the early stage of this movie, or just as I was watching, I was just like, why is this so horny? Really, why this movie? It should an adventure with an animatronic duck running around with his human pals and getting into scrapes. It's
like he's a sad noir detective. Like that's very much what his opening section is.
Like here's the thing. It should either be like complete like clean comedy stuff, or it should go completely the other way. Like if you are going to go like for sort of duck breasts, go the whole way with it, like, and just have that as your tone the entire time. So we go, okay, anything's go at this point.
Yeah.
This doesn't know what it wants to do on the tone
No.
front.
It doesn't go cloaca to the wall, if you will.
Yeah, claws to the wall.
And it's and it's essentially just a load of like loosely connected set pieces. Really, you know, it's like there's not that much in the way of plot. Really, it's just, you know, Howard's trapped on Earth, makes a couple of friends, gets in some scrapes, trying to get back home. Bad guy's here, defeat the bad guy. Oh, I'm trapped on Earth. That's
the stop motion bad guy.
Yes, which I will come to. I mean, I'll give it this. Generally speaking, the effects aren't actually that bad. For a mid-80s film, I still think it looks pretty good. I've seen other films from this era that don't look as good as this. You can tell it was like ILM and
the power of ILM.
Yeah. And bearing in mind, this is the same year that Tron came out as well.
Yeah.
So the effects are starting to get there. And I think I saw somewhere that this was the first film to use wires that they then digitally removed to do some kind of levitation stuff.
Where Howard's sucks out of his living room on his armchair, and through all his building stuff. That's
which is now such a fundamental kind of technology that's kind of taken for granted, and you realise it had to have started somewhere. And bear in mind, 10 years earlier, there's a reason why the original spider walk for The Exorcist wasn't put in the original cut, because they couldn't quite get the wires removed properly. So this is a technology which has to be improved, and Lucas admittedly is somebody that was always pushing for the effects to go in that thing, right from Star Wars into the prequels.
I mean, let's talk about how Howard as a character is kind of portrayed. I mean, he's so they talked about being like a fully computerized kind of character, but the technology wasn't there at this time, really. Kind of realistically, you wouldn't get that as a main character up till Phantom Menace, of Jar Jar. They're like supporting players and like the odd scene before them, but in terms of like someone who you're going to spend the whole film with, that was really the
either that or Toy Story perhaps. But even Toy Story, even now looking back at Toy Story, they're fairly blocky. I mean, you look at Sid, something like that, and you go, it's like, well done for the time, and if you just suspend it a little bit, that's fine. But then you look at it now, and it's like you look at it one day and it's fine. You look at it the next day and you go, okay. I mean, I suppose the 90s.
I suppose you could argue Roger Rabbit as well, in terms of like having like animated characters interacting with like live action footage and stuff, which is what this would be if they'd have gone down that route. And then he talked about like maybe doing it just as a puppet, like he did with his with Star Wars, most of the aliens in Star Wars. It was either a combination of people in suits or puppetry. But
Howard the Duck, the Muppet.
Yeah.
So this would have been the reverse of the name a film, have one person a human, the rest are played by Muppets. This is one character is played by a Muppet, the rest are still humans.
Yeah. So that they ended up going for an animatronic suit. An actor of small stature, with an animatronic head essentially. But because it was quite a rush production, so what they end up with is still pretty impressive. It was very much a case of trial and error. And they had to do like different kinds of ducks for different kind of stunts and different kinds of scenes. A lot of them were a bit unfinished and didn't look quite right. Some of them would just spontaneously explode or just shoot their feathers out.
Absolutely quackers.
And
Kieran, that was foul.
Yeah, excellent.
On the first day of shooting, apparently the crew realised that they could see the inside of the puppet's neck when the mouth opens. They had to like redo that, and
they were like, "We shelled out all that money for this."
And they had to reshoot a lot of the scenes involving Howard multiple times as they kind of got the technology right, essentially, because they shot a lot of it. That, well, we could do better. We'll come back later. Oh, this is a better puppet. Right, let's do all that again.
I was going to say, in previous films, what you did, if you were Steven Spielberg, is you hardly showed your animatronic monster at all. This, you kind of don't have that option. Imagine Howard's the Duck, but like with the Jaws principle, that you only just like... Either that or like the original Chucky, where half the time it's just like a fleeting glance, you kind of pull him along.
I mean, the marketing campaign didn't reveal him at all, and so they really wanted to keep his final appearance a surprise. And the director apparently found it really hard to keep things on track and kind of coordinate the shoots because the puppet head was so demanding and so many different puppeteers and like animatronic operators were involved. It was just trying to keep everything else going around it while all that was going on was an absolute nightmare. I mean, I'd say the effects, I think overall, are pretty good, and I think Howard's a decent creation. I mean, I feel sorry for the performers inside the suit. I mean, God, but and there's like a scene towards kind of the final acts, kind of the big kind of set piece before meeting the big bad guy. There's like a big chase where Tim Robbins and Howard are in this like little plane and. Been chased by police cars and goes all kinds of havoc. That was the main reason that John Landis turned down the project. Is that, well, I did a police chase and car pile up in Blues Brothers. Everyone do that again so soon.
It was that okay, I guess.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Nothing else. Nothing. No other controversy.
Yeah, so I was going to say nothing to do with previous things to do with Landis and planes at all.
It was a helicopter.
Yeah.
Yes.
Flying machines.
Or flight. Yes. Please ignore the man behind the curtain.
I will say the only mildly funny thing to me is whenever he's just talking about duck stuff. That's why God took away our wings and
yeah.
And then you look at
like, Tim Robbins, what were you doing in this?
I think that it wasn't really a big name at this point, was it? This was probably like
he wasn't billed very highly.
I think I think the one bit that made me
got to get your web foot in the door though.
Yeah.
The one that made me really laugh out loud, I think, was when Tim Robbins was theorizing about how Howard's species evolved on this planet, and as like the early man kind of chart, but with ducks. It's amazing.
I'm trying to think of some more. You can tell.
Yeah. So towards the end, the bad guys riding around in Jeffrey Jones most of this. Again, another person we don't talk about anymore for different reasons. But it's basically Jeffrey Jones with his skin falling off and putting on a croaky voice until he turns into a big stop motion monster at the end. And the stop motion monster's so cool because it's a Phil Tippett creation, so of course it's cool.
Well, also he's like the Dark Master of the universe or whatever, but I thought he was saying Duck Master, which would have been better.
That would be better.
Yeah.
The thing is, the monster looks really cool. But because it's the 80s and it's like really dodgy green screen, the lighting is so bad on it. Like it's just like it's
obviously been on that bit was done on a completely different environment to the rest of it. And then just
it's like
superimposed in.
How is it that that's awful, but the thing can get it so right? Like, it's because one did it on a green screen and one actually did it for real there. Like in a miniature, I guess, but.
Yeah, and it comes down essentially to a classic thing, a big beam battle, So it just see so many times like two adversaries shooting energy at each other, and it's like the beam going from one side to another. Oh, who's going to win? Who's going to push harder and save the day?
Yeah.
It's like Harry Potter.
There's a fight in a diner, which is kind of what is it? Is it? It's like some weird fusion food, isn't it? Which should never go together. I can't remember what it is.
She's wearing a Japanese like head wrap.
Yeah.
The waitress.
The chef's Japanese, but I think it's like Chinese something else, like Chinese Cuban fusion or something like that. I can't remember what the place was called now. Gotta find it.
By the way, don't look up what Jeffrey Jones did if you didn't already know. Oh God.
No. Don't do that. So apart from Howard, obviously your main, I suppose, star name in this is Leah Thompson, and God, she must have been grateful that she had Back to the Future on the CV the year before this.
That'll be where Spielberg and Lucas coming in.
Yeah. There's a lot of cross pollination here, isn't there? And yeah, and she's fine. It's pretty generic kind of, character. I mean, what she? She's not in love. Especially she's a bit of a damsel in distress towards the end, but because she's a punk guitarist, she's got a bit of attitude. She'll run her mouth off every now and then, and there's obviously the very awkward near bestiality scene.
Is it though? Is Howard like an actual duck, or like how does this like?
Well, we've got to think because there has been a lot of thought put to this. So if his species, as females have breasts, and he squirms quite a bit when something nearly hits him in the crotch, you got to think, well, maybe he has got something going on down there. But yeah,
there's too much thought to go into this.
They cut the quite gross strip search scene short before we find out.
Yeah, like somebody on the internet will have gone too far into it, and I don't want to go that far.
No.
Yeah, there are some weird decisions when making this. Can you imagine trying to pitch this script to somebody though? Like I know Lucas is like the main thing, so I don't know if they kind of came up with it and everyone just went, "It's George Lucas, let him do his thing."
I mean, let's go over to. I've got a few Letterboxd reviews here, which kind of sum up some of these thoughts, and like this one kind of sums it up. So Hollywood exec, say George Lucas, you know what we think you should dump a ton of money into producing? A film marketed at kids where there's this humanoid duck, right? And he does all the things us humans do, like smoke cigars, swill bad beer, look at porno mags, contemplate masturbating his way through his lonely existence until surrendering to the sweet release of death. And yes, maybe even have sex with a human woman at some point. Oh, and he plays the guitar. Doesn't that sound like fun for the whole family?
It's not.
I mean, what was that movies of this era just for no reason end in like a musical number? I mean, at least Back to the Future, it was kind of sort of set up, that Marty was a musician and it's a school dance. You can kind of justify it, but this is.
But Howard's a musician. Like it explains this several times. Like this is the point.
Yeah. They had an anthropomorphic duck-sized guitar too.
Yes. Yeah. That somehow is managing to play individual strings despite the fact the size of his fingers. Therefore, it's very not working. Like,
some other Letterboxd users they said, if you just imagine how many people in Hollywood had to sign off on a talking duck movie this horny, the whole thing gets a lot funnier.
Yeah.
And my heart goes out to the team of people who had to mold and sculpt tits on a duck. And finally, turns on movie. 3 minutes later, sees duck boobs. Turns off movie.
Like here's the thing with like having to make the anatomy, shall we say?
Yeah,
it's got to be a weird conversation. What did you do at work today? I made duck breasts for a movie. That's got to be a really low budget movie, right? No, there's $36 million put into it, which by now, because I just looked this up, is the equivalent of like over 100 mil. And it's like, and it's being produced by George Lucas. Like the two things don't really go together.
Yeah, and 2 million of that 36 million just went on the duck suit. So
there are some strange things that have happened in Hollywood over the years. This is one of them.
Following a test screening, Universal executives Sid Sheinberg and Frank Price were allegedly arguing about who was to blame for green light in the film, which ended up in a fist fight.
Yep, that sounds about right.
This has been a cult hit though over time. I mean, you can't tell it's not a fascinating film, and it's probably not for the right reasons. I wouldn't even say it's not entertaining. It's just strange and so ill-conceived. It's really interesting.
It's a fascinating artifact, but you can't say it's a good film.
No, of course not. Mark Kermode would disagree. By the way, he's one of the fans. He said it was his favourite big budget film of that year of '86. I'm trying to think what else can we compare. What else was out in '86?
Well, how old was he? Was he like 10?
I was going to say your age probably does change stuff.
Yeah, he was born in the early 60s, so he'd have been about 20, in his early 20s, I think.
Well, Top Gun was out that year. Crocodile Dundee, Platoon, Karate Kid 2, Aliens, Ferris Bueller.
Yeah. So his favorite big budget movie. So he's saying he prefers this to Aliens. Weirdo.
Yeah.
Ed Gale, who obviously physically portrayed Howard, apparently he said he regularly receives quite a lot of fan mail for this in particular. Apparently more so than his Chucky performances. So there you go. And also apparently he was hired to work on Spaceballs because Mel Brooks said anybody who was at Howard the Duck can be in my movie. So
That's excellent.
This is where we go.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, it's an artifact. It's an oddity. It's fascinating. I'm pleased I finally seen it, and I wouldn't say everything in it is awful, because I think visually, kind of on the scale of it's quite impressive. Still, you can tell obviously the money went into it, but it's just so kind of ill-conceived and just strange and totally all over the place.
I was going to say, if they picked like a singular tone, aka completely PG or completely X-rated, essentially, and just go with that for the one side, a lot of the kinks would be ironed out. Yeah. But it's just the fact that it just goes everywhere and tries to do everything at once, which just completely derails the entire thing.
I mean, if you want an actually good version of Howard the Duck, is actually in the MCU. He's been introduced from Guardians of the Galaxy onwards, just in a cameo. He's now voiced by Seth Green. So he had a cameo in Guardians, and he sort of had the odd line here and there, in the other films. But in the latest series of What If, Marvel's animated anthology show, there's a particularly good episode called What If Howard the Duck Got Hitched? And basically, he marries Kat Dennings' character, and they have a child, and they've got to protect their unborn child still in an egg from basically all of the Marvel films queuing up to get it. It's like Thanos and Loki and everyone they fought basically up to that point. So all these villains coming to get this egg, which is kind of prophesized to give birth to something really powerful. And wouldn't know it does, but yes, he's really good in that role, and it's a good version of Howard. It's interesting to see kind of a universe where he kind of settles down, has a bit of a domestic life. So
still
George
bits
Lucas.
Of guitar and...
I mean, George Lucas, he could have done anything at this point, couldn't he? I mean, and stepping back from Lucasfilm and just doing his own thing. I mean, what's he produced after this? He obviously, apart from the indie films, he and obviously came back to Star Wars eventually, but he just did his own thing and just produced the odd project when he felt like it. Really,
I think so. Yeah, I don't
footed the bill.
Anything...
Yeah, I mean,
but
I mean, about a decade ago, he did that World War II film, didn't he? Was it Red Tails? About the black fighter pilots.
Sorry, how long ago? Wasn't that 2012? Like,
so about a decade ago.
Producer after Howard the Duck. He helped produce Willow, Tucker the Man Whose Dream, The Land Before Time, Last Crusade, Radioland Murders apparently, and then goes and does the Star Wars prequels. Then does Crystal Skull. He does Red Tails in 2012. Strange Magic, and then producer of the Clone Wars as well.
So essentially, he's just living his best life, and he'll occasionally just slap down a big mound of cash, and if it works, great. If it doesn't, he probably doesn't care.
I guess he made that Skywalker Ranch money back eventually. So
I
probably just had to sit there for an extra year and make it back.
I just feel more sorry for Hewitt, really. That this was going from the highs of American Graffiti and Temple of Doom, to this, and basically killing his career. Really hasn't directed since.
I mean, we complained about, or I complained about, kind of up and coming female directors essentially just being given blockbusters which we know are kind of not going to do very well and derailing their career for a while. this guy's been given even worse end of the stick. Like, imagine your only directing credit is Howard the Duck. Like, that's not a directing career that you want.
But like I say, it has got a certain amount of cult fandom, so there is that. I'm sure he's attended like fan screenings and probably received rapturously there. But
It's probably one of these things that you put it on at Comic-Con for like a 40-year anniversary next year, and there'll be everyone dressed up and hailing it as a forgotten masterpiece. When you see those articles where you're like, oh, this is when we need to re-review this and understand that actually it was a forgotten masterpiece at the time, and the world hated it, and you look at it and go, but it's not a forgotten masterpiece. It's still awful.
I've seen people arguing that for Batman and Robin. It's like, what? It's just you can't.
No, it's still a bad film. Like, we can't do this for every single film that was awful.
You can enjoy things without them being a masterpiece.
Yeah. And we can't just take every film that was bad and come back to them 40 years later and say they were actually good because you were 6 when you saw it and didn't know any better.
People need to be more comfortable admitting, I like this because nostalgia, or I admit this is a bad film, but I still enjoy it. There's nothing wrong with saying that. But just don't claim it's got higher artistic merits than it has. I'd say,
yeah.
So moving on from that then to another big genre name, putting his name to
Swans to Satan.
Well, if you look at the poster for Devil, you see the elevator opening with an upside down cross pointing into the word devil and from the mind of M. Night Shyamalan. And so, of course,
it isn't untrue because he did do the story for this.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's not untrue even if he didn't do the story. He is involved in the making of this film. However, it is very much a marketing tool to get people in to watch this crappy horror movie. I mean, it's not that bad, but like it's not great.
It's so predictable. Can I just say, cold who the Devil was from the first time we saw them. It's just the way they're shot. It's like, well, that's clearly the devil.
Well, and the thing, of course, is from the mind of M. Night Shyamalan in 2010. So by that point, his major films, he's made The Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, Signs, The Village, Lady in the Water, The Happening, and was in the process of making The Last Airbender. Fortunately, that hadn't come out yet, but people knew that Shyamalan means there's a twist. There's this really interesting story, and so, of course, this has to have a twist. That's just kind of the whole point, is there's going to be a twist.
I would like to point out that Last Airbender came out July 1st, 2010, and Devil came out September 17th. So a lot of people would have already seen Last Airbender with its amazingly,
I would hope not,
gloriously high, I think about a 9%, 5% on Rotten Tomatoes for Last Airbender. And please remember that also, yes, Sixth Sense, I'm looking at Rotten Tomatoes, which obviously is retrospective for most of it, but gives a general indicator. 86%, Unbreakable 70%, Signs 75%. The trouble is then The Village 44, Lady in the Water 25, The Happening 18, and The Airbender that come out 2 months before 5%.
So, yeah, he
Shyamalan
really
is resting on the films that he did at the beginning of that decade and very much not on the ones that he did in the second half.
Well, then he made After Earth, so it's not like it got better immediately. We kind of had to be eased back into trusting him. But since 2010, he has produced The Watchers, which is his daughter's film, and Caddo Lake, which is a Max streaming thriller. So now I can't find information about this, but the other producer involved, which makes me think maybe M. Night wasn't involved beyond writing the story as you might think, which he did write the story, and this was part of a planned trilogy of films called the Night, what is it? The Night Chronicles trilogy. And the next planned film was called 12 Strangers, later changed to Reincarnate. and it was about a jury discussing a case dealing with the supernatural, and basically these were all going to be stories taking place in like modern day America with supernatural elements to them.
And one of them's a something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you'll notice in the producer role, not executive producer role is also Sam Mercer, who during the early 2000s and mid 2000s was M. Night Shyamalan's producer on Signs. By the way, he was nominated for a Razzie Golden Raspberry for Worst Picture for Congo in '95. He did The Relic, he did Unbreakable, he did Signs, The Village, Lady in the Water, which was also nominated for Worst Picture. He did The Happening, which was nominated for Worst Picture. And he did The Last Airbender, which won Worst Picture. And then he also did Devil. He's made a few things since, but it appears the last film he produced was the BFG.
Yes,
from
there's
Steven
a reason
Spielberg.
for that. He died last year, February 12th.
Oh, okay. Well,
69.
I mean, he did die in 2016, so maybe he retired. Who knows? But yeah,
To be honest, between stuff like BFG, although some of his films aren't great, he also did Snow White and the Huntsman as well. He's worked for De Palma. He worked on Jarhead, Sixth Sense. Like, there's a certain point where you kind of can retire. I think you've got enough there that it might only be a little flat somewhere, but you don't need to do that much. And he would have been in his 60s by that point, so he probably went, you know what? Let me just get a flat somewhere. Let me go fishing.
I made my money off M. Night. Now, let's see. This is from a 2014 blog called The Obsessive Movie Nerd, so I'm unsure of how accurate this is, but it's the source I found. M. Night Shyamalan came up with the concept of 5 individuals trapped in an elevator, one of whom is the devil. And that foundational idea is pretty much all that he came up with. Maybe he came up with the twist that it is. By the way, I'm just going to go ahead and spoil it. So if you care for some reason, stop, watch it.
It's always the ones you least expect. Basically, it's the one who isn't like been pointed at saying it's probably them.
Yeah, it's the old lady who dies and then comes back to life because she is the devil. But then there's also the twist that Logan Marshall Green's character killed the cop's family, and so that's a twist as well.
I mean, fun fact: I did see a clip with M. Night. Somebody asked him how he came up when he was promoting Devil, and he said it was kind of in an interview, and somebody was asking him about Hitchcock, and he was saying that certain people can just slap their names on something, and you know what it's going to be. And he just said something like, Hitchcock's The Elevator, and you'd be in for that, the kind of thing that's going to happen. And he apparently just went away going, what would you actually do for like Hitchcock's The Elevator? And he started coming up with ideas, and he essentially based the entire plot of that and Agatha Christie's, and then there were none.
I've got to give this. It is a good kind of, forgive the pun, elevator pitch, isn't it? It's a good high concepts kind of thing. It's like small cast, confined space, supernatural elements. This film is not affiliated with the Linwood Barclay novel Elevator Pitch that came out sort of 6-7 years ago either, just saying.
And then the actual, boots on the ground screenwriter and director, we got Brian Nelson, wrote the script, so took the story, took the concept, and was like, okay, time to put in all of these, down home American blue collar worker, banters, and give all of these individuals personalities and reasons to be suspected as the murderer, because that's what the plot of it is they're slowly dying in the elevator, and every time they're dying in the elevator it blacks out.
Go off.
It's so silly.
Why? To save money.
To save money, and because otherwise then they would go, well, nobody did it, or the old lady did. Like, I don't.
Yeah, like if you've got a big enough space, you've got people that can wander off. To kill people off in a one by one, in like a kind of 5-foot sort of square, you've kind of got and keep a mystery. There's only so much you can do. So although we go, it's stupid, every time the lights go off, somebody's going to end up dead. What else are you going to do? How else do you physically do it?
and like they've got to obviously keep the body count going, and you can't just keep killing people in the elevators. So they've got to find contrived ways to kill off the supporting cast and the other people in the building. So it goes a bit Final Destination, doesn't it? How they kill off like the engineers and the security guards and stuff.
By the way, just saying, I'm looking forward to Final Destination 6. Just saying.
He also wrote TV stuff. He did The New Adventures of Superman. He wrote on Jag, Disney's So Weird, and In a Heartbeat. He wrote Hard Candy, 30 Days of Night, and Rupture. And then John Eric Dowdle.
Some good ones.
John Eric Dowdle is his brother Drew is a producer with him, I think, and has an executive producer credit on this movie. He's made a few. He did The American Quarantine. He did As Above, So Below, No Escape. Yeah. And then since he's done Waco and Joe Pickett on television.
Also,
but
he's also, we're still on Brian Nelson now. He'd also done quite a bit on Altered Carbon, which I just finished the third book of that. I love those books. They're very good. I haven't seen the series, but the books are good.
Yeah, and so it's not, it's not people who are big names, and that's why it is from the mind of M. Night Shyamalan. Maybe that's what the M is for, but it definitely feels like that episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia where they're doing M. Night Shyamalan twists, and it's just, and then this is a twist, and then this is a twist, and just coming up with as many different twists as you could possibly come up with. But none of them really hit in this movie, except for at the very end when the spooky old lady comes up with black eyes. I mean, it's a little fun for a second, and then the way they get out of it is a little fun. But it's something that is confusing is that the narrator is one of the security guards. He's a Hispanic man named Ramirez, and he's talking about, when I was a little kid, my mom told us stories about the devil, and it would always start with a suicide. And I'm like, oh, that your mom's telling you suicide stories. That's real weird. And as that is being said, a guy falls down on top of a vehicle, and there's a janitor in the foreground of the shot, and it's like, oh, okay, this is the janitor talking. But the twist is that it's the security guard who's telling the story of his mother telling devil stories to him. But it's fortunate that he's there because he knows how to get them out of this situation thanks to his extensive supernatural mythology knowledge. And yeah, there's all these different characters who show up in the lobby and go into the elevator, and there's a cop investigating the suicide who then starts investigating the murders, and these 5 people are in the elevator. You got the security guard guy, the old lady, this slick, smooth talking salesman, a really quiet, shady looking guy, and a rich lady.
Yeah, and they work out that they've all got connection to each other in some regard, and they're trying to work out what the connection is and what they're in the building for, and
yeah. And it's all...
Yeah, and essentially the connection is that the devil is doing the same principle, not only as And Then There Were None, where they've all got some kind of shady past and they're being punished for their sins, but it's also therefore pretty much Saw 2, where they've all done wrong things and therefore they're getting killed off on... Sorry, all Saw films.
Particularly Saw 2.
Yeah, but Saw 2 is just the one I've got in my head. Satan is Jigsaw in this movie.
It's all just told to us, though. Like, we only get one flashback, and that's for Logan Marshall Green's mistake of wrecking his vehicle.
I can't... poor old Logan Marshall Green, I can't watch him and not think, if they had more money, Tom Hardy would be in this role. Your budget, Tom Hardy, Logan Marshall Green.
Yeah. And, I think maybe I saw him in this before The Invitation. That's the one where I first was like, oh, Tom Hardy, interesting. But
I know him from Prometheus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, yeah, it's just, it's very uninteresting to watch them go.
I would say, I'll give this. I think the first half, I didn't have that many issues with it. I thought the setup was decent, and I was kind of intrigued about what happened. But it's the execution, like how they unroll the twists and do the revelations, everything in the second half. It's just so clumsy and kind of predictable, and like it's like, what's the first thing? Kind of, it's always like, what's the first idea you had for this situation, for this particular scene? That's what we'll go for. We haven't workshopped this at all. We're just like, oh, that'll do. That works. That doesn't fall apart.
I mean, thankfully, the good thing is that it is only like 80 minutes long. So it does kind of set up, gets in there, does what it needs to do, and gets out again.
Well, that's because there's not much to do.
I was going to say, it's one of those things where you either do it very quickly or you drag it on for an extended period somehow.
Well, it could have been even shorter. I actually think as a short film, this would be really good. You imagine what Reece Shearsmith and Steve Pemberton would do if this is like an episode of Inside Number 9. You could do it in half an hour. You know, it might be quite
either
good.
that or just almost like a kind of anthology episode, maybe an hour max, or a kind of like a Twilight Zone sort of thing. You know, one of these like you literally do it like an Alfred Hitchcock Presents sort of thing. It is one of those ones that you have to get the timing exactly.
I'm actually astounded that to this day Shyamalan hasn't done like his own Alfred Hitchcock Presents, because he wants to be Hitchcock. He's always wanted to be Hitchcock. That's how he models his whole career and style around. You know, why hasn't he done his own version of that?
I guess that's what this was gonna be, because that's what all three of the Night Chronicles trilogy was going to be. But
I mean, in terms of being a character, you're kind of introducing the story and everything, because he likes to have a cameo or even a larger role in all of his films he directs.
I'd take a kind of continuation of Del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities, but you get a different director each time. To do it, like a season 2 would be M. Night Shyamalan, like a season 3 would be maybe like a Villeneuve or something along those lines, you know, or Bong Joon-ho kind of doing one. And I'd do it like that. A Cabinet of Curiosities, who's the host this time, kind of thing. I'd take that.
That could work. Yeah, that could work.
And it's just so much of it is like there's no communication between everybody, because the speaker only goes one way, and the lights go out, and everybody's talking and telling everything, and it just starts getting super boring for an 80-minute movie.
Yeah, there are some things like that. There's only so much you can do, and sort of like the logistics of it. So kind of obviously when you go in, you have to cut off the phone signal, and everyone goes, "Oh, that's so cliched." But my alternative is, well, what is the alternative? Like you go in there and you've got phone signal, you just call the help. Yeah, we're stuck here. Everyone gets in, and it's suddenly an awful lot quicker. So it's just something that you have to do. If you're in there with kind of only a limited place to move. There is a lot of telling in there, but there's not much you can do in the way of showing, because it is just 5 people in a box. So I think a lot of it is just that just the length is just very slightly off. It needs to either be sort of 20 minutes shorter, or again somehow find an extra element to throw in order to stretch it out to maybe, you know, an hour 40 or something like that, like a parallel thing going on at the time, maybe another series of murders going on that eventually links back to this, a bit like a Saw kind of thing, and you bring these two kind of plot lines together in some way, because again, once you're in that space, there's only so much you can do from a logistical point of view. Something like The Platform, which came out now, so I haven't seen the second one. I'm like, what do you do a second platform? Like the first one actually did a good job, but that at least had some room to maneuver.
Well, it was a big old class satire, that, wasn't it? I mean,
yeah, but I mean, even just in the set, you have physical space to move around and therefore show things. That's one of the reasons why. One of the tricky things that Vincenzo Natali did when he did Cube, which is a similar thing where there's only so much you can do in terms of showing, and it's essentially camera angles and everyone saying everything else. There's it does get quite tricky to do that. So I'll give them that. But it's not great either.
But you've done that to yourself at that point. Like you've boxed yourself in. Like it's hard to say, well, I give you credit for this when you couldn't then like, well, how can we make this more creative? Hey, M. Night, do you have any more ideas of what we could do here?
This was his creative funk section, so of his career.
Again, just out of curiosity, I've just loaded up Letterboxd for this one as well, just to see what people say. I think my favourite from these is someone asking, "Whose high school creative writing class homework is this?"
Yeah. One of the twists in this movie. So Logan Marshall Green's character's girlfriend shows up, and she has like a single cherry blossom tattooed on her neck, which is funny, just in a really weird spot. And she goes and says,
"Is that just
hello."
her actual tattoo, or one? I don't know. The film?
It seems fake because he's a bit of a rundown, mechanic marine guy. So I figured she needed to look a little rough and tumble herself. But she goes upstairs to the cop, and she's like, "My boyfriend is Tony Jankowski." And they're like, "Wait, say that again? Jankowski?" Wow, that's a big twist, is that the old lady was not named Jankowski. So why didn't he put his first name on the sign-in sheet? It doesn't make any sense. I don't know. It's because it's short, it's whatever, but I wouldn't really bother watching this movie. It did make money, though.
Yeah, it did make a decent amount.
That's interesting that the others didn't get greenlit because they're small budget.
Yeah, I was going to say, again, it's we always say that he was in a creative wrong, like, this is an awful movie and stuff like that. But the names does still pull, because people were still, as much as they were kind of hating the last few things he did, they still remember some of the good things he did. This is why everyone was, before it came out, again, to bring back Metropolis, going, "Oh my God, it's going to be amazing. It's Francis Ford Coppola." It's like, yeah, but you remember. Well, the thing was, this was for years before it came out. Everyone was like, "Oh my God, Megalopolis." Even I'm Freudian slipping, and a movie.
I'm beginning to worry Kieran likes Megalopolis and keeps conflating it with the good one.
No, it's Freudian slipping, a movie I'd rather be watching. So I know I keep bringing up Megalopolis, but it's a very good example, and I think it will be a very interesting artifact going forward on marketing and the power of an individual. It's kind of authorial, kind of almost like Heaven's Gate kind of thing. But everyone online was going, "Francis Ford Coppola is back. This is going to be amazing. It's the guy who did The Godfather, Apocalypse Now." And it's like, yeah, but after sort of Dracula, what do you remember him being in? Or what do you remember him doing? Not much. And even the stuff that was vaguely passable, there's a reason why it went up to all the advertisements. Where the latest one was Bram Stoker's Dracula, which was like over 30 years before Megalopolis was coming out. Like, people have, like, they remember what they want to remember. So the fact that M. Night Shyamalan, this movie, the name was still plastered over it, and it was as big a draw as it was, they were banking on the fact that people were still remembering Unbreakable, they're still remembering Signs, they're still remembering Sixth Sense. And we can say it was an awful movie, they've done all these awful things, how can people have gone to see it? It would probably, in a Blumhouse way, probably still made sort of 50-55 mil, but there will be a decent chunk, maybe 10%, that M. Night Shyamalan's name brought in just by putting their name on it. So as much as we can go, this was an awful movie, how did it make it? He was in his awful section.
They nearly quadrupled.
The name worked.
They nearly quadrupled to 10 million budget. So
yeah, and there will have been people in there that if you kind of gone, I'm not too bothered about it. Oh, it's being produced by Shyamalan. We'll put some extra money in. Because you also look at it and go, it was made for 10 mil. How did this thing get made for 10 mil? Like, you can make this for 3 mil.
A lot of it went to M. Night and Mercer.
Well, the thing is, like, again, you slap a name on it, and all the investors go, in which case we'll put more money into it. That's how like that's how film producers raise the money. They put names in there in the producing role, the directing role, the acting roles, and everyone and all the kind of people.
It can't be that expensive to do a few plate shots on the streets of Philadelphia, surely.
Yeah, and and in the nicest way, like Logan Marshall Green is the most well-known actor in there, and this is before he'd done most of his like stuff that he's known for now. He's not a big name. So it's not like you've got sort of, I don't know, like a Bruce Willis in there, or
It's not like you have William Fichtner.
But again, it's not like you've got kind of like an Oscar-winning actor, even from like 15-20 years ago.
I suppose you got Chris Messina as well, haven't you? I mean, I know it's kind of mostly pre his more bigger stuff, but he'd been in a few things. I think there were. It's a film full of kind of people you go, oh, that guy, yeah, can't remember your name, but yeah, I've seen your face.
Yeah, it's a film full of people where the cast are like, I remember I've seen them probably on an episode of something somewhere, but that's not exactly a big draw, especially for investors, and that's kind of the thing I'm wondering. I'm going, how do you get 10 mil unless you've said this is being produced and it's based off a story by M. Night Shyamalan? I can guarantee you they'd have got 6 mil, 7 mil for it. So you shove Shyamalan's involved, the investors are going to put more money in. Because again, I looked at it and went 10 mil. How do you make this for 10 mil? This is not a 10 million shot film. I can tell you that I can hear my old lecturer Hugh Pennock Jones in my head going, why do we need all this? No, we can make this for 5 mil. And if I'd have given the script to my old lecturer and somebody who's producing the film I'm going to talk about next, he would have made it for 5 mil.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I would have budgeted for 5 mil.
Kieran, you should go ahead and just start talking to us about the Milo Gibson fronted All the Devil's Men. That's where the budget went, right?
I cannot believe that guy is the same age as me.
Who? Milo Gibson? When was he born?
The big guy.
Like,
1990.
He was born in 1990. He's the same age as me.
So he's 28 when he did this. Okay.
I think we said before we came on mic, I think before you joined us, Kieran, I described him as a sentient neck.
Yeah.
I need to ask veterans that I know if they talk about the tally, because I didn't know that was a slang term for the Taliban.
It probably isn't. And I
remember we were fighting the tally in Afghanistan. You remember that when we were together doing that?
Okay, so this is the date. Let me just check if it's in the script. Okay, so the reason why I chose this again is because one of the co-producers, Hugh Pennock Jones, was my lecturer, and this came out like the year before I started my MA degree, which is the first year of the degree that he'd kind of organised and started. And one of my modules was essentially, he gave me the copy of the script. This is the shooting script for All the Devil's Men. And he went, right, you're going to break it down, you're going to schedule it and budget it. That is 20 credits. Good luck. We'd never scheduled anything, we'd never budgeted anything in our lives, and the idea was essentially, if you can do this, you can do anything under the sun, because there are general conversations, there are also massive shootouts on runways.
True.
So, like, if you can do this, you can do pretty much anything going. You can do Star Wars because all the principles are going to be the same. You just kind of escalate everything, essentially.
Kieran,
for one of my other modules, we did a couple of scenes and had to fill out a copyright report as well for it. So there was a bit of kind of copyright law and stuff like that, and checking stuff out that you'd need to do as well. So this was about 15% of my master's degree was this film.
I have two big questions. One. I'm
not sure I'll be able to answer them.
The co-producer Amory Leader also did the music. Are they a musician first or are they a producer first? And also, what is the plot of this movie?
The plot of this movie, in the nicest way, I don't know. Amory Leader is the son of Hannah Leader. Hannah Leader is a producer who has worked an awful lot with my lecturer Hugh Pennock Jones, and was also one of the people that did My Happy Ending. So I've technically worked for Hannah Leader, and Amory Leader was on there as well. So I've worked for several of these producers. Technically, they produced the film I worked on. the story I got told, and again, I don't know how much of this is incredibly confidential. I don't know, so I'm going to kind of say these are all anecdotes I've heard. That Amory Leader was looking to essentially follow in his mother's footsteps and become a film producer, and had got hold of this script, and they were going to produce it together. So this is his first producing role. I've no idea. Did you say you did the music for this?
Yes, with Simon Williams. Amory Leader did the music.
Solo cello. Okay, so maybe that was just they needed a cello player, and so he came on for it as well. His main role was producer, and essentially the way my lecturer got involved, Hugh Panoff Jones, is that again, old friend Hannah Leader, they'd done many films with, came to him and went, "We're producing this film. Can you come on and help?" Especially because it's going to be Amory's first time, and he was like, not really interested in this film that much, and essentially I saw the paycheck. It was decent enough for about 8 weeks worth work, and he gets to kind of essentially almost in a supervising role. Put it this way, it was under 50K, but not by much, for about 2 months work realistically, and maybe some kind of post stuff behind the scenes. So it was a decent chunk of money that anybody would go, yeah, okay, I'll do it. Because we got the script and we were like, Hugh, why did you do this film? And then we saw how much you got paid, and we were like, okay, that's why you did this, because we needed to fill into the thing as well. So that's one of the interesting things that obviously, again, some producers literally sometimes, even if it's a film you're not interested in or you don't think is particularly great or for whatever reason, sometimes there's money involved, and you have to. If this is your livelihood, you have to go and make the damn film, because this is how you pay the rent or your mortgage or whatever it is at the time. It'll be a mortgage, it won't be rent. So that's kind of how he got involved. And after he did it, he gave it to us, because he was like, "This is a film I did last year. I know how we did it, so I can tell you exactly what you did, why we did it, how we did it, and that's how he can mark it." Because like, I was there. I was watching them on day 2, filming the final scenes of this runway shootout and watching them blow up an aircraft hangar. He's like, I was there. Fun fact, if anyone's going to do any explosions on their films, tell police beforehand. Because I think it was for this film, and I think it was that day. Maybe even another film, but for some reason I've got this one in my head. They'd alerted kind of London police. They filmed this on a small runway, kind of in the London area, but outside of the city, because you just need a runway strip that's kind of disused and a hangar for this kind of Gulf jet that's leaving. And they told the police, yeah, we're going to be doing some shootouts for this film. There's going to be an explosion. We've only got one take of it because the budget's low. Just so you know, so you don't get panicked. Okay, yeah, cool. Bear in mind, they're shooting all this at night. I don't know why they shot it at night. That wouldn't come into my schedule, but he was only co-producer, wasn't main producer. Anyway, I wouldn't have scheduled it like that. But still, essentially, that day in the afternoon, there's a bomb scare in central London. That evening, they're doing a shootout and explosions. So an hour in, the chief of the London police is on the phone to my lecturer going, that is you, right? Because we've had reports from the area of explosions and gunshots. We're about to send the SWAT teams in. Just let me know it's actually you. It's like, yes, please don't send the SWATs in. So again, it's just like the weird things that you don't know might happen until you randomly start doing stuff. Yeah. What were your 2 questions? What is the plot of this film? We have to get a main character to stop a bad guy.
Yeah. So
he's buying a nuclear warhead because he's secretly converted to Islamic terrorism. He's buying them from Russians. These are introduced halfway through the film from nowhere.
Yeah,
that's what made it so confusing.
So he's a CIA asset battling ex-SAS guys who are working for an arms dealer or something, Russian arms dealer, and it's
I don't even think
shooty bang bang.
Yes, what this film is, it's an awful lot of phone conversation in a car, action scene outside. Phone conversation in a car, action scene outside. The amount of different car manufacturers that are in this script is hilarious, and the amount of different kind of names of phones and iPads
I'll
and
give
stuff
it
like
this.
that.
I'll give it this. I didn't mind the opening scene where his first like kill, where he playing around with the door locks on his target's car, and I thought that was that was fun.
I don't know how he knew the 15 seconds. I guess he counted, but
no, I don't. But it was quite cool. But that's like
the Marrakesh stuff is quite fun.
Moment.
Fun thing that I only noticed rewatching this. Okay, bearing in mind, I was working off the shooting script. Yeah. So normally you would not be doing a breakdown, a schedule and budget off a shooting script, because essentially this is the one where essentially by this point there are now camera movements in there. You would not give a script to producers to work off that have got camera movements in. You wouldn't even put them in there. That is the director's job. Even though Matthew Hope is the writer and the director, you kind of don't write a script with camera movements in, because there's always a chance that it's going to be passed to another director. You are the writer, not the director. It's not your job. So I'm technically not working off the one that you'd initially do a breakdown and stuff like that, especially if you've got to do that 6 months before you're shooting. You might not have decided camera movements by then. You've got to have some idea of what you need on set and everything to do by then. So it's slightly different.
Speaking of that, there is that really funny scene where it's just a bunch of face-on shots of 3 people having a conversation. Like, so weird.
Films. Yep. But literally the opening scene, he's doing the kind of pull-ups to work himself up. And there in the script, it specifically says he performs a set of hanging sit-ups, not 1 ounce of fat on his finely honed body, a body branded with a multitude of scars, a roadmap of unimaginable hell. There are no scars on Milo Gibson's body during that pull-up scene. I know, because I was looking at it, because I've obviously done that, and one of the reasons that's probably not on there is because obviously you have to get makeup. You have to get somebody to design all that. You then have to put it in for one shot.
So they just thought, right, we've got a unit, that'll do. It's absolute. Just show us absolute unit.
And again, it's like for those who haven't seen kind of breakdowns, it's kind of looking like this. So I've got loads of different colored highlighters for various different things. So I've given myself a key on the front. So like yellow is costume, pink is props. I then went to different colored pens because I ran out of highlighters, like SFX, graphics, extras, equipment, weapons, to note all the things that when you then do a schedule, you put in for each scene everything you will possibly need for this, including like cranes, low loaders to get cars to the set, because it's then that everyone will work off and go, okay, for this scene we need, even if it's like we're going to have explosions, so we need to have fire crew on set. This is the kind of stuff you're working on. You do it from this. And I kind of remembered the scars things because I went, okay, if we've got scars, we need to get makeup in. So I have to note that in the breakdown so I can put it in the schedule that we need makeup on. And again, this is essentially what a line producer would do. The kind of budget and schedule is a lot of a line producer's job, or can be.
Which color did you use for homoeroticism that I'm sure pervades the shooting script?
I do not have anything for homoeroticism, I am afraid. That is not something you can kind of budget for.
Just comes naturally.
I don't know if that was a pun or not. It's very dirty-minded of you. So anyway, yeah. So I was kind of watching this back and going, "There's no scars on his body. Hang on, there is in this script. What's going on?" There's some funny things. So like some of the longer conversations, there's just bits that are cut out where it's like several kind of lines of dialogue where it's obviously just gone, no, kill it, just easier like this. And you know what? Actually, the action sequence is in Marrakesh, where he's kind of driving through the things, and we're getting the slight little chase. I'm just gonna say it's an awful lot more action packed in the script than it is on the film. It's not the most exciting car chase in the world. But here's the thing, again, when I was looking at the budget, I came up with a budget. My budget was not great because obviously it was my first attempt at doing a budget, and there were issues. There were things I missed. There were things I got over budgeted, under budgeted, stuff like that. I got told that the eventual budget for this was around $6.5–7 million. which is why I'm looking at Devil and going, how was this made for 10 million? And it also shows that kind of you can get an awful lot of stuff for pretty much nothing.
Considering the amount of location stuff alone on this, you know, you'd think like the budgets between two films would possibly be reversed, you know.
Yeah, and again, the reason why I got fairly close to the budget was I sneakily looked at the budget beforehand before I started budget, so I gave myself a target. But it's there's just some interesting. So, for example, where spoiler, William Fitchner gets shot. All those kind of location areas they essentially went and did in where all the Olympics had been, where they got the Olympics villages and all the road stuff like that, because they're there going, we've got lots of blocks of flats where they were putting up all of the workers and the athletes and stuff like that. Nobody's there anymore. So the streets are going to be fairly empty. So there's less people walking in and stuff like that. So they shot that there, and it's interesting ways to think of those things. There were several scenes where they kind of shot some of the stuff at night, and we were asking, because obviously new to this, for essentially copyright and stuff like that. How are you going to deal with kind of seeing kind of number plates of cars passing by and stuff like that? It's like if you shoot it at night, you can't see a number plate. Like you don't then have to get permission for it. If you look, I can't remember instances in this one, but there will be instances where if you see lots of kind of TV and film where there's cars in rows down the side of the streets, you will hardly be able to see any number plates. There's a reason for that, because if you see a number plate, you have to get it checked, because they are copyrighted. And so actually there are some like lists of number plates where they're on databases which are copyright cleared, so you can essentially go, we need a film, we need 10 number plates, can we rent these out? Yeah, because they're not like put up to specific cars. So it's weird things like that you notice while doing this stuff. That
anti-abortion movie we did, I remember, had a paper license plate on one of the cars.
Yeah, that'll be for copyright reasons. And there's a scene at the end of the scene in the pub. There's a bit where Dayton kind of sits back and starts tapping on his phone to call up his mate. There is a reason why you can't see the screen. And that's because if you show the screen, everything on there is copyrighted. Every single typeface, every single icon, the sound, 100%. So it's just easier not to show it on and just do it like that, because then you don't have to clear that whole. It's easier.
I saw a film recently. I can't remember what it was now, but I think it was fairly like mainstream, that high budget and stuff. And I remember there was a scene like a suburban street and all the cars, all packs of cars, and how they dealt with it. It was just like almost like digital like lens glare basically against all that number plates, but it's like really obvious that they were just kind of shading them out that way.
So on my copyright report assignment that I did for this, that I'm now obviously not going to be able to find, I had to do a thing as part of it and go, yeah, this may become an issue. How do we deal with this? Unfortunately, I can't actually access the schedule and budget that I did for All the Devil's Men to look over, because I think it was on the university system rather than on my laptop, because I didn't have the software at the time, and I think now after 5 years they get rid of it automatically. And I kind of left and came back, so I think they'll have cleared all that. I tried re-downloading it and couldn't, but I do have my copyright report, which I'm going to look at and see actually the advice I gave, which is literally, it's just like a big table, and all films will do this to get script clearance, and you even have to check the like names of characters. So I went through all the characters. It's amazing copyright reports if you only have a first name, or if they're really obvious, because then you just go, there's 20,000 people in the country with that name. It's absolutely fine. If you are doing something like Fight Club, where you have somebody called Marla Singer, and the United States there were 2 people with that name, either of them could legally or could argue that the Marla singer in the film is based on them because there's only 2 people with that name. So when they did Fight Club, they had to ring up and contact both Marla singers in the US and essentially send them the script and go, "This is our thing. This is the name that's kind of being used in the book." We're going to think, "Are we allowed to use this name? It's ridiculous." Let me see what I did for it. Give me more questions about the film and I'll try and answer them. Give me your opinions on it.
Well, Kieran, do you remember the scene where they're running around with guns and
Doesn't help.
They're running into an alley and they're like, it's going to be an ambush. William Fichtner's still alive and the frame is blank and then they run in from behind it, but they're talking in voiceover.
Very possibly, yes. Let me see where that actually is in this.
There is some pretty clumsy kind of ADR work in this.
Yes.
It's so fun.
Yeah, it's not the greatest. And again, I mean, they shot this. I found an interview just before we came on, and it was a 36 day shoot, which, considering there's an awful lot of action in this, is actually pretty good for this. So maybe they were just like, we don't have the time, or it's just easier to shoot it without getting the audio and then we can snip back in. So that whole thing, from when they burst out the car in the shooting script, Colin says we need him alive. Brendan says we got to catch the asshole first, you dumb bastard. I apologize for the language. This is what's
I don't know who these people are.
Collins is Milo Gibson. William Fichtner says we need to catch him. Dayton, main bad guy henchman, says essentially then goes, Terry McKnight says hello as he kills William Fichtner. Milo Gibson goes, we need to move. And that's it. So if there's anything else that wasn't in the script.
Yeah, I think you mean Terry McKnight says hello.
Here's the thing, right? I can't remember who plays Dayton, even though I technically had to put
Joseph Milson.
He's got the least threatening voice.
Yeah.
He's got the least threatening voice, and yet he's actually one of the better performances in the film, I think.
I actually thought for a bit that Milo Gibson was Dayton, because I thought Dayton was saying we need to get Dayton in one of the dark running with guns scenes, where he shoots. I don't know his name, so I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to call him Black Guy. Shoots him in the back.
Samuels. Yeah, I remember that. I remember that because it's a link to me.
Yeah. There's some weird stuff in this, and I'm not going to like defend the film in any way, because when I look at it from an kind of critic's point of view, I go, this is not the greatest made film in the world, and I'm trying to be vaguely nice in case somebody sees this and then gets back to my have connections, you know.
Yeah. At least Sylvia Hooks got Blade Runner 2049 after this. So.
Well, this is 2018, so she would have probably filmed it.
Oh, she already done it.
Because 2049 was 2017, I think. Yeah, 2017. So she would have shot it, and that was released. And the shooting script was March 3rd, 2017.
Okay.
So she would have done that and then come straight into this. I don't know if that was Blade Runner was a chance for me, because that was obviously the biggest thing that she'd done.
Yeah.
By that point, because she's Danish, something like that, I think.
Well, and
or Dutch, I can't remember, Danish or Dutch.
Something.
Kieran, you're not going to be able to speculate, but I'll do it. Is there a chance, Sam, that this movie was a money laundering scheme? Just with how generic and boring it is. Kieran, you can stay out of it.
I mean, they always say, don't they? No one sets out to make a bad movie. I'm sure they were trying, but it's just very uninspired, the final result, really.
I was going to say, yeah. I mean, there's this little interview that I saw with Matthew Hope that is actually the first time that I've seen what he looks like, and admittedly, I didn't catch the whole thing because we've got to come on air. He sounded just like essentially, I want to make a movie. I've done a couple before. I just want to make a fun action movie kind of thing. There was kind of no pretensions about that at all. It wasn't trying to kind of plumb the depths of some kind of that some action movies do try and find a depth to the inner psyche kind of thing. This was I've got an action movie script. Let's make a fun little kind of CIA action movie.
He should have left out the adjective, and he would have nailed it.
Fun.
Yes, I wanted to make an action movie.
The trouble is there's a bit of a formula that it falls into, which is phone calling car shootout, phone calling car shootout, phone calling car shootout, and it just kind of goes along.
You could very easily imagine Jason Statham or Gerard Butler in the lead for this, couldn't you? And he wouldn't need to change anything, but just
You'd probably need to change the budget.
You'd have an extra 30-40 mil.
But at least their general kind of star persona and charisma might add a bit of something. It might make your lead a bit more memorable at the very least.
I was going to say, considering Hugh also worked with Jason Statham on Chaos and apparently helped do some of the financing for Lock, Stock, I think. Although I haven't actually been able to find his thing in the credits, although he keeps saying that they had so little money on that. It was like Jason Statham's and Guy Ritchie's like mums helping out with the catering, just bringing big vats of chili for all the cast and crew. Like, this is how you made
the whole original Evil Dead way of doing things. Literally just getting everyone involved in production in some regard, and
it's essentially
knocking on neighbours' doors for handouts.
This is slightly higher budget than that, but it's not that much higher budget. I mean, there's some weird stuff as well, like just checking the initial car. So in the Morocco kind of section, where our main guy Marlo Gibson is being he's being chased through the car, and then he gets out and then goes into another car. That other car is a BMW. In the script, it is Renault Megane. And I put that out because I'm looking at it going, that's not a Renault Megane. What the hell's going on? So I don't know, and it may very well possibly be just that they didn't get the clearance. That Renault said, no, you cannot use our car. And so you have to go to a BMW. Because that is the kind of thing that happened. Because then later on, it says that he approaches a Citroen DS4 or whatever it is, and it is a Citroen DS4 in there. So this is, again, one of the other things I was saying about the cars earlier. The cars, you also have to get cleared by the car manufacturer. If you've ever seen any kind of old kind of spy movies where they have a laptop in a briefcase, why do you think it's in a briefcase? It's so that you can't see the flipping logo on the back of it, so that you can use any laptop under the sun, because the general principle is you can use it as long as it's not recognizable. As soon as somebody can recognize who it belongs to, then they have a claim against kind of copyright. If you can't recognize it, or at least it's not obvious to the general public unless you're an absolute nerd and can know by like kind of I don't know, the shape of something that's kind of very, very kind of particular, but only to somebody that would know, you're kind of fine.
Well, so you're telling me that Pulp Fiction was probably driven by copyright, and it's mystery.
What, with the briefcase?
Yeah.
Yeah, they actually had like a Linux in there, but they couldn't show it. Yeah, that is exactly what I'm saying. Yes. This movie is kind of, it's there. It got everyone fed, and some
not the theaters.
It went to Netflix, so, and it was on there for a couple of years at least. It's not on there now, but it had been there.
It's on Amazon Prime now.
Yeah.
I paid $3.99 to watch it
to
support your lecturer.
Yeah. I'm guessing it made some of the money back at least, if not all of it. But then again, it was made for like $6 million. So if Netflix bought it for,
do you know?
12
sorry, just bring up the Mel Gibson page. I thought you were joking when you said he was Mel Gibson's son.
No, he is actually Mel Gibson's son.
Could you not tell just by looking at him? He looks just like him.
No, I couldn't.
That's crazy.
But the thing is, there is, and I want to tell this anecdote because it also goes into the budgeting side of it, but I don't know how cruel it will come off. And again,
Sorry,
but if you look at his kind of stuff, Milo Gibson had been in very few films by this point, and if they
Hacksaw
were there,
Ridge by
yeah,
his
but
dad.
How
they
did he get that
weren't
role?
kind of leading roles, if that makes sense. They were kind of minor roles. Automatically when we got because when we were doing this budgeting, essentially because we didn't know what we were doing and we'd no idea. So there's things like laundry. Like, how do we know how much to budget for laundry on this kind of film? Like, we have not got the faintest idea to begin with where to start looking. So random things like that, we kind of got given to us because it's just, it's not going to be too harsh straight off. One of the things that we got thing is that for acting coach. And I kind of got rid of it in my budget because I went, they're all actors, they're being paid to act. Why do I want to pay somebody to teach them how to do a job they're already being paid for?
Just do a Batman voice.
And the comment response was, there is a reason why that was in there. So I'm not going to go.
What was the reason, Milo Gibson?
I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to say that perhaps there were some actors in there that maybe were first or very few times kind of in a leading role. Sometimes you might need somebody on standby just for a little help and guidance along the way. I'm just going to say that sometimes you do have this stuff in here that you go, why are they in here? And you go, sometimes in the nicest way, there are names brought on because they help get the funding. And sometimes you do need to give a little coaching to make sure that the quality is there as well.
Okay.
Matthew Hope, not an actor's director.
Yeah, fact that I learned from this, or at the point, 35 pence. So this was 2017, 18, 19, around there. 35 pence per bullet or blank. Because that was one of the other things we had to add up as well. Because if you're doing a budget, you've got to work out how many blanks you're using. Not only that, what happens if you need a reshoot? Somebody's got to pay for all the blanks to go back in. Somebody's got to pay to put them all in the walls as well and stuff like that. So even kind of looking at stuff like this, the trouble is, after having done all my work on this film, I do occasionally watch action movies go, that's about £4.
Yeah.
And then there was a thing that they do at the start, but they don't do later on, which is that a lot of the bad guys are in kind of ski masks. Later on, they're not, and some of the bad guys have kind of names for some reason that I don't understand. And when we were starting to do this, the lecturer Hugh just went, pay attention, because in the script, like quite a few of them are just like contractor 2, contractor 3, bodyguard 4 kind of thing. And he goes, keep an eye on it, because occasionally, just in the script, you'll just throw in like bodyguard 2 who comes back in a different scene, and it will make it look like it's the same character that's come back from the dead, even though they're shot in a part of a shootout earlier on. And I essentially turned around and went, why don't you just put them all in ski masks? And I generally got this from Saw. You know, the bit where they're like, oh, we need to shoot him from the waist down. Yeah. Because it was Lee Whannell and James Wan, and Lee Whannell's meant to be chained up halfway across the thing. Yeah. I went, why don't you just put all of them in ski masks? And then who gives a damn who it is? You can have the same person playing 5 different people. You could have one of the accountants that's not doing anything double up and have a bit part.
Get the acting coach.
Yeah, like nobody knows. And he went, decent point. Why didn't we do that?
They have like the other end of scale, which is Hong Kong action films, or a stunt team basically ending up killing each other multiple times as different characters, and it's obvious what they're doing, but they don't care. It's like it's all part of the fun.
And I'm going there like,
look, it's that guy again. He's been killed 5 times now.
And the thing is, it sounds stupid, but also if you do. Like as I almost pull out my thing from my microphone, if you do that like for several people, if you've got action sequences that are taking 2-3 nights to shoot, if you've got 2 people there, and especially if you have to run over, there's a bit of overtime. If you double people up, you don't have to pay for hotel for extra people for anything like that. You can save yourself like $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 easy just by going, just come back in for this one, because I don't have to pay for 2 actors' hotel rooms now. Like, it's just a simpler thing to do. And it's like, okay, yeah, maybe I didn't think about that. So next time you're watching an action movie and they've all got ski masks on, it could be anyone under there. Like, you know, it could be like, oh, we need another pickup. Somebody's still here. They've gone home. Come back in. Do that job. Like, Nobody knows. Who's going to tell? And that's how you make an action movie with car chases in Marrakesh and explosions and shootouts for £6.6 million, might have been dollars. So even less in pounds, which is impressive. It's not the greatest movie in the world. I apologize. There's an awful lot of phone calls and throwing away phones and then getting another one somehow, and then having a car destroyed and then breaking into another car and then getting given a car.
Yeah, I would say it's a bad movie, but they tried, bless them.
That is the takeaway from it, yeah. And again, I have a very inside view because although technically I didn't work on it, I kind of like theoretically broke it down. So like I make jokes to things like a Yubiki Neo, which is just like essentially they needed another phone or tablet, and I think like that is an actual thing. But then when we were on the degree, that just became like a running joke, a Yubiki Neo. It's like, oh, he's using a Yubiki Neo. Like, what the hell was that? None of us had heard of this before we see it in this script. Like, I don't even know what it is. I think it's some kind of like electronic device, data device, something like that, like a USB stick sort of thing. And every time I think of it, I just go, oh, it's a Yubiki Neo. Like, for no other reason than it's from this script. Like, it's ridiculous. Yeah, it's an interesting one. And, you know, if anyone's interested in kind of doing this sort of thing, just getting a random script and literally going down and breaking it down is an interesting way to just get a head around the kind of things that you'd need to try and organize a shoot like this. Because I mean, all this stuff doesn't take into account random things like, let's say that there's a shootout in here with a boat. Yeah, and they go on the boat and then they go and do an action scene. Well, a lot of the boat stuff.
Did they hack the boat?
I don't know. Hopefully, they didn't rock the boat. Don't rock the boat, baby. But a lot of that is shot from a crane. Well, not only do you need the crane, you need to be able to get it there. What happens if the truck getting the crane there breaks down? Like, where's your mechanic? Not only that, you're there for an entire like night shoot, okay? And it's in the middle of nowhere. It's on location. Where are your toilets? You've got to go and get your toilets there, like beforehand. You've got to go and get permission from the people that own the land to the place you're shooting to be able to drive everything there to go and shoot it. And there's various bits like that that you just kind of don't contemplate. You just kind of watch this, oh, there's an action shootout in a scrapyard. Yeah. They just turned up, they got some fake things, like, have some fun with a camera. No, there's like 50 odd people on set there. And there's all the stuff beforehand that you have to make sure is actually getting there, and that's all from the script.
And it's all part of the producer's job, all part of their headaches.
Yeah, and it's kind of, this is the reason why like they're paid and why they're so paranoid about everything. Because if stuff goes wrong, if there's only 3 toilets and there's one toilet for a crew of 50 odd people, it comes back to the producer. It doesn't matter whose fault it was, it's the producer should have picked up on it. So like it's kind of, they're the ones that get the headache, but you know, that's kind of their job, and it's their job to find them. I don't know who funded this. Just saying, I've no idea. And it's quite a number of production companies come up when you look this up. That it was produced by this company and this company and this company and this company and this company. Distributed by Saban Films. I've never heard of them. I'll probably find out that it was actually run by one of Hugh's friends, which is quite likely. But probably 1 or 2 of the production companies will be a shell company, because how you do it is you essentially, a big company goes, can you make this film for us? They go, yes. You will make a shell company whose entire job is to make that film, that will then pass the rights over to the big company, so that if something goes wrong, the big company doesn't take the hit. It's the small one. You essentially almost contract out a company that's existed just for this thing. So I'm sure there'll be 1 or 2 of the production companies, if you look at the credits of this, that only have this film. You know, like, they only did this. It's like, no, it's not that the only film they made with this. Is that the only reason the company existed was to make this film. It's the other way around. And there's quite a few films where you look at it. Normally when they've got some relation to the film itself. Like, I don't know, if there's a movie, I don't know, Jungle Adventure, you know, and there's something called like Vine Swing.
Yeah, Jungle Adventure Productions or something.
Or something, or slightly like Vine Swinger films, where you're just like, what the hell were they? What have they done? This
Car
film.
Phone Call LLC.
Yeah, you only did this for this was 20 years ago. You only made the one film. How awful was this movie? No, it was probably very successful, but the only reason it was made was essentially to stop legal issues if anything went wrong, and that's again be part of the producer's role. Which again, I want to do this because there's a lot of stuff behind it, and it's how they actually get the stuff made. So it's not just a case of just turn over, going do that. There's a lot of work behind the scenes that you have to do to get even the small stuff, and even the stuff that doesn't pay off as well. It's a massive headache, and it takes an awful lot of team and an awful lot of calculators and an awful lot of shouting, and an awful lot of coffee normally to get the stuff made.
I'd bet Manite was not contracting the toilets and cranes on Devil.
Yes, that would not have been his job. His job would have been
I severely doubt Lucas was for help attack either.
No, that would have been everybody else's job. And again, you do have people like location assistants, but stuff like even things like location managers. Somebody's got to go and hire them. Somebody's got to make sure they do their jobs, and they've all go back. It's a big hierarchy.
Somebody's got to get the interns to drive the stars from place to place.
You would not get interns to drive stars. You would hire drivers. You also hate drivers because essentially you have to hire somebody to drive somebody to set, to sit there all day on their phone, to go drive them back for 10 minutes, and that's their job. And he's like, why the hell do we pay them? And it's essentially because they're the ones that are insured. You would not get an intern to do that. You would essentially pay somebody specifically to do it. That is their job. If anything goes wrong, they did it. But then even with that, you would have backup mechanics. You'd have a backup car in case something goes wrong. You'd have backup plans upon backup plans. And essentially your job is to make sure that you've killed off any problems before a problem exists. And there's so much work behind the scenes, even for something like this, which is ridiculous. And they make the money, and that's why you look at a lot of films, and aside from kind of the very small ones, anything above sort of 10 mil, there's 15 producers and 2 of them exec producers, another 5 line producers, and you're like, what are they all doing? Surely you don't need all of them. And it's like, yeah, you probably do, actually. They're all doing various different bits, but it's a hell of a lot of work to get everything in place to shoot the damn stuff. And it's normally things you don't think about, even for individual props. You've got to have kind of paperwork to say that this prop has been made and signed off to be used on screen, and no copyright issues have been found for it, and various legal stuff like that. That all has to be done. So most of the stuff for this will have been done for that as well. So it's all the paperwork.
Oh, there you go. What's the producer's role? Lots of paperwork. A lot of boring stuff. So yeah, I guess that's it for.
Yeah, if you're very good at getting incredibly organized, and you're one of these people that doesn't hesitate to go, right, pick up a phone and just do that straight away, film producing is your job.
I'm too much of a procrastinator. I will put stuff off as long as possible. So
yeah, essentially you would be a good film producer if you're somebody that doesn't send an email over a phone call. If you have to try and find somebody or contact a company, and you look through the contact and there's a choice between an email or a phone call. If you're the person that immediately goes for the phone call, become a film producer. If you go for the email, probably a different job. Is how
Yes. All right. Well, that's it for film producers, but we're going to be back with something fun next week.
I'll suggest a decent film next time. Yeah.
Fun in the way that the director described fun. But until then, guys, where can people find you?
You can find me at SSP Thinks Film across the internet, and at Second Cut Pod Substack, where this week I have published a review of Bring Them Down, the new indie movie with Christopher Abbott and Barry Keoghan. It's on Mubi.
Is that how you say his second name? I don't know.
Yes, it is Keoghan, yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, and yeah, I'd highly recommend it. It's on Mubi, so yeah, stream it if you've got Mubi. If you haven't got Mubi, get Mubi. Dump all your other streaming services because it's the only good one at the minute.
As a Shudder person, I'll also say that Shudder is okay.
Actually, yeah. I forget I've got Shudder. I need to get back on that.
I forget Shudder, and then the money comes out of my bank account, and then I remember I've got Shudder.
Yeah.
I'm KJudgmental, the various places, also on the Substack. I may have put something up in the last couple of weeks. Probably stuff about Bond. Now having producers, so obviously keeping on the producer ring theme. Several of them produced Spider-Man or Harry Potter, so controversial. And I will be doing various bits at various points.
And you can find me at Jacob Film Guy. All of our stuff is at Second Cut Pod, including our email, secondcutpod@gmail.com, if you want to send us a suggestion or tell Kieran that actually you loved All the Devil's Men. Let's see.
I will pass it on to my lecturer, who will not believe you.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll be back with something else. But thank you for watching, and goodbye.
Adios.
Goodbye.